Welcome, g'day, my name's Seb and I'm here to talk about the three pillars to create a culture for innovation. And if we have time at the end, I'll also tell you how I got kicked out of a library once upon a time. This brings me back some scary memories. Yes, I did indeed start a business at 8 years old. My entrepreneur journey did start at a young age. It was a business called Sunscreen Squirts. Although I do want to correct one point. It was in Hobart, not Tasmania, not Sydney. I live in Sydney now, but it was in Hobart. It's a great little business. I basically acquired my mum's family value pack sort of thing of sunscreen and went down the beach and 50 cents a squirt. You can get about 50 squirts out of one of these things here. So, 50 cents a squirt, 50 to 60 squirts. You're making about $25 clear. 8 years old, back in the mid-80s. That's actually not too bad. Late 80s? Yeah, late 80s, that's not too bad. There's only one problem with this business concept, is it's inherently seasonal. And I did grow up in Tassie, where the season is 2 weekends, unfortunately. I'd hate to think of what my life would have been like now, had I, say, grown up in Queensland or somewhere where they've got a little bit more warmer months. Great business at 8, by the way. It doesn't work so well at 18 or 28. I'm not sure if I'd want to go down the beach at Melbourne, at St Kilda at my age now with 50 cents a squirt and offer it to the beachgoers. I'd hate to think of the sort of people that actually want that. Anyway. I then, after doing that and faffing about a bit at school, I actually joined the Navy, believe it or not, which seems like a bit of an odd place for someone who is, sort of started an entrepreneurial career at 8 years old to sort of get destined into, because you'd think that the Navy and the military is the antithesis of innovation and disruption and entrepreneurship. And to a large degree, it is. But there are some important inherent lessons I learned and skills that I learned throughout the Navy. And my parents, I think, are very thankful that I decided to go down that path, because it sort of shaped me into who I am today, and sort of took a few of the edges off my character. 10 years in the Navy, which is a long time, and something I think you'll appreciate over time, particularly with entrepreneurial people, is they tend to think quick and then act quick and then think about it later. I joined the Navy literally 3 days before I joined the Navy. Where I was standing in line at Tasmania University about to enrol in biomedical engineering because I was chasing someone who had just enrolled in bioengineering. Career decisions at 17. And I got a phone call from Defence Recruiting. I filled all my papers out for engineering, and I was about to stand at the front, and Defence called and said, we've got a position, 10-year contract, Navy, the Defence Academy in Canberra, weapons engineer. You interested? And I went, oh yeah, sounds cool. Would you be happy to leave on Monday? This was Friday lunchtime. I went, yeah, bugger it, why not? And that's literally how I joined the military. Had they called me 5 minutes later, I probably would have said no. So one of those sliding doors moments anyway. So in the Navy, worked on postgraduate studies. I've developed some technologies to land unmanned aircraft autonomously on the back of moving platforms, warships. We were the first internationally to be able to land a drone, as they're called now, but UAV, on the back of a moving platform. Using lasers. And if anyone remembers the Matrix, the good one, the first one, you got the Nebuchadnezzar that comes down and it scans the ground with the lasers. I basically built that. Not the Nebuchadnezzar bit, but the laser bit. And had we been a bit better with our pattern definition, we may have been able to knock out Microsoft Kinect. We beat them by a few years, because fundamentally it operates the same way. The unfortunate thing is I didn't see the bedroom dancing application of my military hardware. I didn't see the idea of taking a helicopter, pointing it sideways and dancing in front of it. But had I made that leap of thought, had we been a bit better with our patents, we might have been in a different position today, but alas. 10 years in the Navy, had a few startups, not all successful, had some absolute tragic failures, which if you can remember long enough, I will answer those questions at the end. I'm now comfortable talking about it, talking about failure as an important evolution, and also some successes. So I netted 0, pretty much, after doing this for 10 years, which everyone tells me was great, didn't feel good. Everyone tells me it was great, arrived at the same point I started, but with lots of learnings. And then launched into Blue Chili. So what is Blue Chili? We're an organisation that connects entrepreneurs, investors and corporates together to solve and address the world's greatest challenges. And we've got a pretty awesome structure of how we do that. And this structure is based on 3 core pillars, 3 pillars of innovation, which I learnt and developed after teaching 8-year-old kids, like my former sunscreen squirt self, say that quickly, 8-year-old kids how to run their own business. So let's talk about that. So There's an organisation called Club Kidpreneur, founded by a guy called Creel Price, amazing entrepreneur himself. And I got drawn into this concept right at the start of the program, where he had this idea of being able to foster a generation of entrepreneurs, to be able to encourage the 8 to 10-year-olds out there to be able to take up and learn the basic principles of smart business, of failure, of starting something, and give them the encouragement, because as we know, our education system is a little bit old. It's built on a an industrial revolution era, and it's not necessarily applicable to the modern entrepreneur or the modern child. I kind of fit into that category. Had school been what it is today, what it was when I grew up, I'd, again, be very, very different position right now and today, because I wasn't necessarily given any formal education into how to sell sunscreen down the beach. I just did it. But there's lots and lots of people that if you just give them that little level of encouragement, they'd be much better at sort of taking those next steps. And that's what we wanted to do. Our vision was to understand that in the future, the people that are going to be looking after us as old retirees aren't necessarily going to be the charities, aren't necessarily going to be the religions, they're not going to be the governments, it's going to be the entrepreneurs who are successful who are then giving back to the community. So look at what Branson is doing now with his wealth and his money. He's doing some cool stuff, but he's also giving a lot back to the communities. Same with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, eradicating diseases across countries, across continents. This is amazing. So how do you create lots and lots of Bill and Melindas? Well, you need to start at 8. So Club Kidpreneur was an organisation that was founded by Creel, and practically, it teaches 8-year-olds how to start a business. And we've broken that really big, long step down into 3 easy chunks of ready, set, go. Ready is all about being inspired, about understanding why you want to do it. Set is all about, well, what is it we're actually going to sell or build and how we're going to do it. And then go is about going out and experimenting and starting. And to give it some sort of context, we wrapped all of this up in a marketplace. So the idea was to build something. Over the course of 8 weeks, we'd teach the kids how to go through these stages. And then the test would be a live demonstration at a marketplace. Right? So I now take myself back to 2011. We ran one of the first one of these cohorts. It was Manly Markets in the northern beaches of Sydney. And we had a cohort of about 20 kids. But there's a couple of stories here that I want to pull out, because some of the basic principles for how you build a culture for innovation are stemmed from these kids and these examples. And those 3 pillars are speed of execution, tolerance of failure, and empowerment of people. And I'm going to draw, so speed of execution, tolerance of failure, empowerment of people. I saw some people writing that down. And I'm going to draw from these 8-year-olds, their stories and their journeys, how we can arrive at those 3 and why they're so important. So the first kid, we'll call him Dan. He was a little bit older, he was 9 years old. And he was starting the quintessential lemonade store. Right? You close your eyes, you see it, that's exactly what he had. Bright yellow t-shirts with his brand all over it, and he roped his little brothers into helping him. And he was at the Manly Markets. I'll tell you what, this guy had the most amazing lemonade. Actually, a few years later, when we opened our second office in Sydney, we actually got him to cut the ribbon. We had federal politicians asking us, we said, no, we're going to get this 8-year-old Dan to do it, because that's who we are. There's a great photo of him doing it with his bright yellow lemonade t-shirt. Anyway, so 8-year-old Dan's out there, and he was experimenting with his lemonade. He had the perfect balance. He got the lemons from his grandma, from her property. He had the perfect balance of that with sugar, with carbonated water, etc. And this stuff was fantastic. And he was selling it out there for 50 cents a cup, which, if any of us have gone to a market and have seen the $5 cane juice stuff over there, 50 cents a cup is way under. And so we're sort of encouraged, look, you want to bump it up a little bit? 50 cents is a bit cheap. And he goes, no, I'm selling it. It's good. People are buying it. And, we're fine, tell an 8-year-old lemonade mogul what to do. But, after about 15 minutes, he sold, 20 or 30 of these things. Okay, let's experiment, right? And if it fails, it doesn't matter. We can always go back. So let's experiment here. And he goes, okay. So we put it up to $1. And predictably, no, it didn't slow down the volume of sales, but suddenly he was, quadrupling his profits. And he looked his eyes later and he goes, I'm going to make it $10. We went, well, no, slow down. Let's just gradually increase it up. Anyway, so that was pretty cool. But really, what happened next is the thing that I'll never forget. And it's how he seized an opportunity and then basically just ran straight into it with so much speed. and he empowered the people around him without worrying about what was going to happen. He just did it. He saw an opportunity because at the other end of the markets, one of the people selling second-hand clothes or something had decided that was it, that was enough, and they packed up and went home. So it was an empty table. And so he went to his other brother, we'll call him Dan, Dan too, and he goes, take this jug of lemonade, go over to that table over there and start selling. And for every cup you sell, I'll give you 50 cents. So straight away, Dan franchised his business. Right, we had the first franchisee over there. And Dan, and basically his little brother was over there, and every time his little brother was, he ran over the table with the big jug of lemonade and started selling it and ran back to get it filled up, and Dan's other brother goes, well, what about me? And so Dan goes, okay, well, take this other jug I've got and go over to that table and start selling over there. So we now had 2 distribution points. The problem was Dan Senior, back at HQ, was so busy squeezing the lemons and making the lemonade, he stopped selling direct to public. So he shifted his business model away from a direct to consumer to a wholesale franchise model, all in front of us. And these 2 kids out there with the distribution points are actually selling direct to the market, putting their own margin on top and coming back to Dan, who was selling wholesale. It's fantastic watching all this evolve in front of us. But then there's the next evolution, which was just completely magical to see, is his little brother over there goes, shit, every single time I got to run back and get a jug filled up, it takes me 10 minutes, right? And I could potentially lose my table. Someone else, some other lemonade mogul might come and take it. And so this is without prompting, I promise you. We're just watching it bewildered. Without prompting, he goes to one of his friends. This guy's like 6 years old. And he says, look, take this empty jug and run it back to Dan. For every full jug you bring back, I'll give you $3. We had logistics. So right in front of us, this business model went through 3 different evolutions, and these kids made about $200 or $300 clear in the Mallee markets in like 2 hours. It was incredible to watch, and there's this massive blur of bright yellow T-shirts running around with the lemonade logos. Yeah, I mean, they've done it several times since. I don't think they're doing it now. They're probably in high school now, but this education we gave them just gave them the ability to experiment in a safe-ish environment, but still where there was a bit of risk of failure, but they learned a lot. And that's where the elements of speed and empowerment come from. So let's now talk about failure. So we'll go to another one of the little startups that was starting at these at the markets. And we'll call him Dan. Dan's business was selling paper aeroplanes, which sounds adorable, and we went, no one's going to buy these bloody things. He was determined to sell these paper airplanes. I'm going to tell you what, they were beautifully folded. And he was making these paper airplanes during the experiments, and we're trying to pivot him somewhere else. I said, look, maybe paper airplanes, there's not much of a market beyond, mum, your dad, your gran, and maybe one of your friends. That's like 5 people, total addressable market, not so big. Maybe think about something else. And he goes, no, I'm going to make paper airplanes. It's like, whoa, okay. And we're all looking at ourselves, well, this kid's going to learn failure. That's actually a good thing, so let's proceed. Let's let him do it. We were wrong. So he's at the markets, and he made 40 of these beautiful paper airplanes. And much to our surprise, he sold about 20 of them in the first 45 minutes. I was like, shit, no, I didn't expect that. Selling them for 50 cents an airplane, or special price 4 for $2. He didn't quite get that bit of the discounting, but anyway, that's what was written on the board. And we went, okay, yeah, we'll let that go. You're supposed to give a discount. He goes, why? I said, yeah, good point. I don't give a discount. I don't think anyone did buy 4, but whatever. But he started panicking because he's going, I'm running out. And we're surprised, but I'm running out of paper airplanes and didn't bring any more stock. So lesson number 1, he should have bought the materials. Like other Dan, who was busy squeezing lemons next to him, he had all his raw materials. He's able to keep up with demand. The other Dan, no, I'm not able to do it. So this is what was beautiful is, again, we're thinking, you're stuffed. You're going to make about $10 and then that's it. See you later. And you can stand there for 2 hours at an empty stall and look like a bit of a goose, but at least you'll learn an important lesson. No, he changed his business again in front of us. And what he did is he goes all on his own. He goes, I know what I'm going to do. And he grabbed the cardboard box that he bought his paper airplanes in. He cut a hole in the center of it, drew a target and put it on the table behind him. And he said, 50 cents for a throw. If you get the paper plane in the target, you get to keep it. So he changed his business model from a product to an experience and managed to stretch out those last 20 to remain the next 2 hours and made more money and more margin those 20 than he did in the first 20. Right in front of us. It's incredible. And so right there's this tolerance of failure. He was, in the face of adversity, he didn't just give up and pack up and go home. He just went, no, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to do it. And that was right in front of us. Incredible, right? And these kids are 8 years old. So that's about 8-year-olds. What about 48-year-olds? Or people a bit older than that. What can we learn from the adults, from larger organisation businesses? And how does these three concepts of speed of execution, tolerance of failure, and empowerment of people, how are they reflective in sort of more adult, I don't mean it that way, but more adult businesses? Well, firstly, let's look at tolerance of failure. Startups are really good business models for failure because they fail often. 95% of all startups will fail the first 12 months. And of the remaining 5, only 7% are able to actually achieve funding. It's even worse, unfortunately, if you're female. The statistics for women are even worse than that because only 19% of all startups are founded by women, and of the 7% that actually raise capital, only around 6 to 7% of those are founded by women companies. Of the 360 unicorn companies in the world, 2 have female founders that are still at the helm. Of the ASX 200, there are more CEOs called Peter than there are women CEOs. So there's a huge imbalance then. I'll get to how we address that later. But startups are an amazing proxy for failure. Why? Why is that? It's because people are crazy and they're willing to risk everything for something they truly believe in. And that's a very powerful thing about startups. But also failure is contained and somewhat constrained by the amount of capital and resources a startup has. So unlike a large corporate that has shareholders, that has capital, that has quarterly reports and has to make progressive gains over slow time, startups can risk everything on a pivot to challenge and try something else, and they do it all the time. Kaufman Foundation did a study of the 76,000 seed investments that existed back 7-8 years ago, and asked the hypothetical question, what if you'd invested in every single one of those 76,000 startups in the US? And the median investment round was 1.4 million then. It's about 2 now, but it's 1.4 million. Now, what if you'd put $1? Doesn't matter how much. What if you put a bit of money into every single one of those 76,000 startups? What would your portfolio look like, 10 years later? Well, 50%, 0x return, i.e. 50% of those ideas would fail. 40%, you get a one-time return. Right? So in my logic, that's 90% of the time, the ideas will fail. 9% of cases, you get a 10x return, and 1% you get a 100x return, which is pretty awesome. And notwithstanding the 90% failure, your net return over the entire portfolio works out to be about 20% IRR per annum. So it works as an investment thesis. But that's a lot of hits to arrive at those wins over there. I can guarantee you, I'm not a dart player, but I can guarantee you with absolute certainty that I'll hit bullseye if you give me 76,000 darts. I'll hit it. And that's the point. So startups fail. It's a really powerful model for failure. So how does this transcend, though, into broader companies? And what are the lessons we can learn there? And this is a story. It's an unfortunate ending, unfortunately, but it's a story that is based on the Challenger disaster, the space shuttle, STS Challenger. And when they reflected, when NASA went back afterwards to understand what went wrong and how could they fix that, or how could they resolve the issues, they found out that the answer was staring them right in the face. But the culture of the organisation was not a culture that responded well to failure. In fact, the mission commander even wrote a book that said failure is not an option. And that was great because you wanted to bring people into space and then bring them back again, but it was bad because no one was comfortable in talking about failure. And Roger Boyce-Jolly, who was the chief engineer at the time, actually said that very morning we should not launch because the conditions mean there's going to be icing on the insulation, and that's caused risk outside of acceptable merits. He was overruled by his command, but he was documented and saying you should not launch. Imagine him after the fact reflecting on that. Well, he's reflected pretty well, and he's written a lot of books on this. You should definitely check him out. But one of the things I've taken from his learnings is this concept of a pre-mortem. There's no point doing a post-mortem because you're doing it after the fact. It's too late. So a pre-mortem is doing the same things earlier on. And this is a hypothetical exercise that I often take some of our founders through to help them understand, well, what happens when you fail and how can you mitigate those failures earlier on the piece. And what you do is simply is you put yourself in a room with your stakeholders or your friends or whoever's going to be brutally honest to you, maybe not your friends, and you ask them, okay, imagine this project we're doing, this startup, this home renovation, doesn't matter. Imagine this project, whatever it is, has gone terrible. Now, I don't mean just bad and we've lost money. I mean, You can't walk down the hallways without people looking at you funny, and people are sort of muttering behind their backs all the time at you and throwing things like that bad. Like you feel ashamed to go to work or wherever it is. That's how bad it went. So put yourself in there and reflect on that. And then ask yourself why. Well, what happened to get there? And ask everyone in the room what happened. And that simple exercise of sharing failure amongst yourselves suddenly makes it acceptable to talk about. Right? Which means in 6 months, 12 months, later down the track, when you're starting to see some of these things emerge, well, you've already spoken about it, so you've removed the stigma of talking about failure just by doing that simple exercise. So if you can reflect on that to bring that into your culture, it's a very powerful way of tolerating failure within projects or organisations. Another thing that startups do sometimes quite well about failure is understanding that failure at a business model doesn't mean that you as a founder are a failure. There's a very important distinction there. To abstract yourself and remove yourself away from the failure and to treat business as a series of experiments to arrive at product market fit and profitability means that if you remove yourself from that, yeah, it hurts, but you can look forward and learn from it and move forward. People often say that failure is a trophy. It's something that you should aim to achieve. I think that's bullshit. I think if you're aiming to fail, well, you'll succeed at failing. That's not good. The whole point of that sort of mantra of why failure is a badge of honour is because I want to invest in the person that's failed 10 times because it's 10 lessons that they've learned, as long as they're getting back up and trying again. That's actually where that theory comes from. But it's all about embracing that failure and learning from it. So at Blue Chili, we celebrate failure, and we have a little trophy. I was going to bring it, but I'm flying international this evening, and I don't think they'd like having this on check-in. It's a little golden rooster about this big. It's a little golden cock that we award to the biggest cock up. And when someone cocks up, we celebrate it by awarding this trophy to them, and they reflect on what it was that went wrong, and they talk about it. And the worst that happens to them is this trophy sits on their desk for the next week or day or however long it takes for someone else to get it. I won it 3 times. I won it first, and I won it another 2 times after that. The important thing is this is not a tool to ridicule or to laugh at, even though we do have a bit of a sense of humour about it. This is a tool to embrace it and to accept and acknowledge that failure is going to occur and that we're celebrating it. Right? This is a celebration. We get together, we gather, and we learn from it. And we share the collective knowledge about how we're not going to do that again. And as an organisation, we learn and we evolve. And yeah, I really don't think they would let me through security with that little trophy. So, at Blue Chili, how do we get away and do this? What do we do? Well, we help startups. Startups fail often. It's difficult, it's lonely. They don't necessarily have all the right skills or capital or funding or people around them. And our model is to provide those, to support our entrepreneurs with all these people. Our vision, again, to connect corporates, startups and investors together to solve the world's greatest challenges. We do so in program verticals, we call them. Programs like, they've got names like She Starts, City Connect, Collaborate. And the whole concept here is to bring all these amazing people together to invest real money into their businesses and to help them launch their businesses. And to look at those 3 pillars of innovation, the speed of execution, to be able to move really, really quickly, to learn from what we're trying to do, to tolerate failure, and to really embrace the concept that just because the idea fails doesn't mean that you fail. Right? The idea failed, that's fine, we can try another one. And to empower people to take ownership of their ideas and to empower others to support those ideas. We identified 5 key risk areas, if you like, 5 reasons why startups do fail. And our whole model is based around reducing those 5 key risk areas. I'll tell you what they are. There's the risk of team, technology, traction, so sales, tender, money, so I can keep my alliteration going with my T's, and timing. And what we've done is to systematically build our business model around each of those 5 key risks there. And if you're reflecting on your own ideas, your own businesses, or someone else that you know has got a business, look at those 5 key risk areas yourself and think about, well, how can you reduce those 5 key risk areas? We analysed not all 76,000 of those startups I said before, but a big chunk of them to arrive at these 5 key risk areas. 42% of startups fail because of the wrong product market fit, which is a function of technology and traction. So they can all fit in these categories. So ask yourself, how can you take those and de-risk them? because that means that by de-risking the idea, you're going to be more likely to be successful, and you're going to be in the success category, the 5% that will make it for the next 12 months, not the 95% that won't. I'll talk a little bit about She Starts and give one or two examples, and then I'll wrap up. So She Starts is a campaign that we've been running now for about, since the start of the year. And it's a program designed to address the imbalance of diversity that exists in tech-based companies. Those numbers I quoted before, about 19% of tech startups are founded by women. It's even the number's even more concerning when you're looking at minorities as well. So we want to do something about it. So what we did is we put together a program to invest $1 million across 10 amazing women founders, ran a national-wide campaign where we had 813 women, just women, apply, just from Australia, into this program, and we selected the top 20, put them through an aggressive boot camp, selected the top 10 and invested $1 million across those 10 startups. Now that's awesome, and those companies are doing amazingly well, and they're about halfway through, and next week they're they're launching their pilots to their corporate clients. But that wasn't enough for us, because whilst we were directly affecting the lives of the 10 entrepreneurs and the people around them, and were supporting the 813 who applied by giving them free tuition and education, we wanted to tell the world, we wanted to amplify this message to make it easier for everyone to start. So we decided to share their stories through a documentary called She Starts. So for the last 15 weeks, we've been filming the entrepreneurs every week, and we've been releasing an episode of this documentary every week that's sort of been following the stories of these entrepreneurs going through. And my hat off to them, because having a film crew in your face pretty much 24/7 in your house, in your home, everywhere is kind of daunting, especially when you're trying to start a business, raise a family, and do everything else that you're trying to do. But we wanted to show what it was really like, and I invite you all to check it out, shestarts.com. It's awesome, and Henneka's down here. She's running the marketing for that as well. So what can we all do, though, together? So who's thinking or who has started a startup idea? Put your hand up. Right, now, higher, you've got to see it, right? There's a few people, right? So keep your hand up. No, keep your hand up. So you guys have already started. You're the champions in the room. So everyone else, look at the people that have got their hands up. Your job is to help them, right? Your job is to help them, buy them a coffee. It's lonely being a founder. You can put your hands down now. It's lonely being a founder. So buy them a coffee or a beer or whatever. Help them with connections, with networks. Offer them some support, advice. You'd be surprised at how a little thing to you makes such a big difference to someone else going through and trying something. I mean, these are the future leaders of our country right here. Offer them moral support. Offer them investment, partnership, anything. That's what we can all do to make this Australia, but ultimately our ecosystem, a much better place, and look at those 3 pillars for innovation within yourselves when you're trying something: speed of execution, tolerance of failure, and empowerment of people. Thank you.